let's really talk about this for a moment, because when people hear about, typically, when they hear about the idea, the concept of the quote-unquote divine feminine, the minds usually go to a place of hardness, defensiveness, like feminine versus, see, embattling. Let's talk about the divine feminine versus the masculine. Or they talk about, here comes the divine feminine. We're moving into an age of the divine feminine. And I understand that most of you watching this would, probably, like to throw stones at me or whatever for this. But when you promote the divine feminine, like, here we go, everyone, this is the age of the divine feminine, what you're affirming is that the divine feminine age will then also, like all cycles, come to an end, and we'll end up back in the divine masculine again. It's a fact. It's a fact. If we're going to go into this, here comes daylight, now here comes nighttime. If you're going to name one cycle, don't ignore the other. So those of you who think that you are advocating and really excited about the divine feminine, great, good news, thank you. Except you're fating us all that we will eventually swing the pendulum back to the divine masculine again. And of course, some of you don't care because you don't think you'll be living in those ages or times in the future, but you will. Because you still have duality thinking, and duality thinking means you still have to come to the world of duality to work out your stuff. And it's the same with people who say, let's talk about racism. We really need to heal racism. So here's what red people need to do and white people need to do, which you're still naming colors. So you don't really help something by inflating it, by talking about it. So I know this sounds contrary, but bear with me, please. Contrary to what a lot of people think. So the divine feminine is not something versus the divine masculine. There's one, there's another, and that means there's a duality. There's a point, guys, when we don't talk about divine this and that anymore. On earth, we call them males and females. But then we come up with spiritual terms for it. We don't have females, we have divine feminine, we have goddesses. Well, I think that's great because that's an evolution. But if you think goddesses are better than gods or gods better than goddesses, divine masculine, feminine, you're still in a little battle. You're actually still feeding the world of war without realizing it. And just try this on for size instead. First of all, here's a beautiful perspective of what the divine feminine really is. How much more divine in the feminine can you get than the concept of the divine mother? And even then, the divine mother means there's a divine father, which means in God, there's a male and a female. So you'll know when you go to the other side, when you pass over, you'll know who you're visiting because of the gender. The divine mother will have breasts and the divine father won't, unless he has man breasts. Sorry. Anyway, so, oh God. Anyway, so the divine masculine and the divine feminine, guys, what are those? There's no gender. So let's talk about how it starts and let's talk about how it ends in an actually like kind of a beautiful story. All right. So how it begins. Please remember there's no gender, but if I use gender, it's only a figure of speech. It's a concept, but there's no gender. Really outside of this realm, you go from gender, definite genders in this world. When you go into the higher dimensions, gender still exists in a concept of a god, goddess, but they're not really limited to genders and genitalias. They're not like that. We think of it that way, but it's conceptual. You're talking about spiritual beings, so they don't have that. And that's still higher dimensional. When you get outside of the dimensions completely, there's even less of that because there's none of it whatsoever. There is just God. So when we look at the beginning of time, you could say there's this thing called God. This is actually before time. So there's this thing called God. And God is known not as father, mother, anything like that. Think of God as bliss. So there's this state of bliss. There's a consciousness, not a being, as much as a consciousness that we call God. And God is this consciousness, and the best way to know what it might have been or what it is try to wrap your mind around the word bliss. Just this perfect state of bliss. See, notice bliss doesn't have to do anything. It just is. And bliss sits there blissing out, going, wow, this is so amazing. To eternally be bliss. And the only thing that could really top this off would be to create more bliss. That's kind of cool, isn't it? Bliss, see, forget genders. Bliss says, God, it would be great to create more bliss. That's the moment that God/bliss decided. God is not a male gender or term. So try not to think God meaning male. God the absolute, or bliss. So bliss decided to create more of itself. Bliss extended itself and said, here, bliss is like, let's say symbolically, this circle. And then all of a sudden, bliss takes a breath and says, let there be light. And that's the term, God breathed life. God inhales, not literally, it has no lungs, it inhales. And then, let there be light. And it breathes life. Not into Adam, who's on a planet somewhere in a garden. It's breathing life, meaning it all of a sudden, it expands itself. Just like you blowing air into a balloon, all of a sudden, it inflates more. So God becomes more, it becomes greater. There is a distinction, however, between the creator, called bliss, and the created, called the light. So bliss created light. In terminologies of religion, we say God created its children. Still it's beautiful. But as soon as you hear children and God and you start thinking genders, some people then go, well, wait, how did God create children without a female God to mate with? All that is limited, typical human limited thinking. Humans are limited in just a countless number of ways. And yet, the mind can be corrected if we just breathe, laugh at some of the ridiculous things we do and think of, like, God being up in the sky with a beard and, looking just older than us. White beard. Has to be a white beard. You never see God usually with a nice, dark color hair. It's usually white. Why? Well, because it's old. Okay, does that mean God will ever, if God can get old enough to get gray, will it ever get old enough to lose its hair? So eventually, when God gets old enough, it's going to look like Telly Savalas? No. So get out of the silly human stuff and get into the sacred. Bliss created light, or God created its creation, us. We were one child and became many after we came into the universe. But God breathes and says, let there be light. Can you imagine, guys, what it means? Why do you think there's a star at the top of the Christmas trees on Christmas? Why do you think we celebrate the sun coming over the horizon every morning or during certain seasons? Why do we celebrate the moon being beautiful and, full moon and all that? It's the full moon, but it's also the sunlight reflecting on the moon. So why light on the moon? Why light in the sun? Why the golden light harvests? Why is the golden honey the nectar of the gods? And why let there be light? Why did Jesus say, I am the light of the world? Why light? On the tree and all that. Because it symbolizes the moment you and I were born, created. I mean, breathe that in for a second. Because it means, even though humans often make a religion, and religion then turns and worships people and says, Jesus is the light of the world, Jesus is this, Jesus is that. Yet Jesus himself is saying, all that I've done, you will do and more. Meaning, not everybody, people around today, his time, can't handle some of the things I'd like to be able to show you. And he said, even then, I'm showing you just a little bit now, later I'll show you more. Meaning, I'm saying that It's not just that person. Even Jesus celebrates the light of God in all of us. So there's just such a beauty to it. Yeah, we can commemorate and say the sun represents the Son of God, the sun represents Christ, or the sun represents life, or the sun this and that and the other, depending on what angle of golden, beautiful white, golden light and all that you do. But how amazing it is to think that it also represents you and I. You and me, we're that light. I mean, it's amazing. So God created us in its image, and there is a light in every being that was ever created. Not some of us. I know we would like to think of some people might have missed the day of creation, and they forgot their light. Or, some people, they just were without a wick, so the light didn't catch, We can all think of some people we've known, exes and relatives, and on goes the list. Or some historic characters. But guys, that doesn't apply. It doesn't work that way. This light is in every being God ever created. And we know that because when God created and said, let there be light, the light became. It's not like God could go, God, I hope this works. When it says, and so it is, it is. There's not even a fraction of an ounce of a possibility of it not being so. It's not even possible. It's perfect love creates perfect love. And that was us. So we're perfectly made in God's image. And then we at some point, which I'll get to, we refracted into many bodies. So I look like this and you look like that and everybody looks like different characters on earth. But inside every one of us there's a light, because all that happened was our light, one light that was one with God, seemingly separated into many lights. And then the many lights flew into the universe, landed on the earth, and zipped up bodies like clothing and said, hi, I'm male and I'm female. And we sit on earth going, oh, the divine feminine is nothing but the light that zipped up a female body versus a male body. Ridiculous. So if you're into the concept of the divine feminine, see if you're willing to expand your understanding of it. If not, that's totally fine. But see if you are. If you know nothing about it, maybe you'll learn something new. That would be cool too. But if you say, no, this is not the way it is. The divine feminine is better than the masculine. The divine feminine is an era that's coming now. And we'll swing there and we'll never swing again. The pendulum will stop somehow magically, where there won't be a duality pendulum. We'll just swing to the divine feminine, and we will have a wonderful world of angry women running everything. No. When you try to do that, you know what you do? You end up having an election where someone looked like it was going to represent all the divine feminine angry people, and they ended up with somebody who was more extreme the other direction, just to try to teach them a lesson. The universe trying to bounce back at us, kind of pushing back on us, saying, that's not how it's done. So how is it done? Back to the beginning. Perfect bliss creates more bliss, and it becomes the light of God. That's us. The light of God says, this is so incredible to be this bliss, this light. And we're kind of newly created, let's imagine. We're not bodies, but we're beings. And we're light, and we're going, in this new understanding that we are the light of the world, we are the light of God. I wonder what it would be like if we weren't. What if we weren't one with God? What would life be like? And I've told this example, used this example many times, so I won't go into it in detail. But what would it be like if we could be separate from light? And that's when the Big Bang took place. And then the universe was created. And the children of God that were one being in one God, that thought the thought, said to themselves, oh my gosh, what have we done? We just created a universe of darkness, meaning not negative or bad, but limitation. Because if you're one with God, you're unlimited. And we said, what would life be like if you could be limited? And all of a sudden, a limited universe was created so that we could go and explore that. Here's what it's like to be in a limited universe. Oh, great. No money to pay rent. Relationships come and go, and karma, reincarnation, and on. All these limited concepts. Bodies that get sick and so on and so on. Now, what I think is really beautiful is that bliss said, let there be light, and that never changed. But the children of God, the child of God that became the children of God, as soon as we see the universe being created, we started seemingly gravitating towards the universe. We went and flew into the universe, and when we did, as soon as we did, one pure light, kind of picture it this way, we're coming from the heaven, we go through this veil, and one being, one that was one with God, as soon as it went through that veil, it refracted like that, into the way light refracts into the 7 rays of the color spectrum when it goes through a prism. So we refracted, because that's what happens. When light goes through a prism or a veil, it refracts into parts. So we became light particles. And those light particles became separated. And the more we separated, the less magnificent we were, the less brilliant, the less fully conscious. And we started becoming more limited in our consciousness. And we digressed and digressed. They call it the fall. Digressed and came to the earth plane, and gradually, without going into the details, we took on bodies. And as we were going through the veil, refracting, bliss said, I created this light. Now, it can't leave me, but it can think that it is. So it's as though you can imagine, if we were talking about beings, God is looking at its children going, where are you going? And we're like, we don't know. We're drifting into darkness. God said, well, you have free will to think what you want, and that's what you think you're doing, that you can create darkness and drift into it. But I love you too much to just let you. I won't take away your ability to think that. But I do have the right to create anything I want. I won't uncreate you, but I'm allowed to create something else. So I'm going to create something else, another part of God, a second part of God. You could say, in a sense, the first part of God is God, second part is us, and the third part now is being created. And so this third part is being created and told, I want you to become the universe that they're flying into. And I want you to be in their minds calling them home. I want you, because they're thinking that they can forget me. They think that they fly into the darkness and now they're going, where are we? There's no God. I want you to be God in that world that they're creating. And if we were to now put gender on it, this is, and I've shared this story before, so I'm going to have to be brief. You could say, God created its children. The children seemingly separated and went off into La La Land, the universe. And then God created the Divine Mother. The Divine Mother, from the word matter, becomes the material universe. So it's amazing because the universe, its darkness, becomes a womb. So when we flew into a universe that we thought this thought, here we come, we're separating, boom, into many beings, and we go into this dark universe. See, but before we could even enter it, God already countered our thought and created the Divine Mother. And she became the womb right here that we flew into. Just the way the sperm moves into the womb and impregnates it. We moved into the womb and we think we actually went somewhere. And yet God extended itself and became this womb to catch us. So you can't leave God. In a way you could say, God the Father is of heaven, God the Mother is of earth. Or, not just earth, the universe. In reality, there's no gender, but that's where that concept of the Divine Mother comes from. She's also called by some traditions the Holy Spirit. It's the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, right? It's still the Trinity because a lot of traditions understand that there's a creator that initiated this, a created, which is us experiencing this, and there's a third aspect of God that is the part that calls us home. That's why they call in Hinduism, they call her, there's Brahma and Shiva and Vishnu. And in one respect, it's really strange because they call it the creator. And when you get to the other extreme of the creator, the destroyer. The creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. And they go, some people go, wow, this is great. So the mother gets the word destroyer, another negative connotation on the female, but it isn't. That's where that comes from. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. It's not. That's what people use at wedding or funerals. They'll say, well, gee, because we don't understand God, let's just go to that scripture. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. As though we're supposed to live in ignorance and somehow be blindly faithful to that concept. And we're not. We're asked to understand. The Lord giveth, meaning one aspect of God created us. The Lord taketh away means takes away our illusions and brings us home. So it's a beautiful thing. People dramatize masculine, feminine, and make this all negative and positive and battling. And no, man, just stay out of the argument and say, not today. Not interested in hearing more of the arguments. I don't want to hear about one more male that's better than a female that's better than a male. I don't want to hear about women are eventually going to take over and rule and they'll make everything all right. Guys, that's just an illusion. It's still a duality. If they do and did make it better, and if it's true that men are only bad and are, they're the ones who screw things up, nature will have to bring us back to the other again. Stay out of the argument. Stay polarized to the center in God and know the truth. I'm not going to go over to this argument or this argument. And yet, there is a really beautiful validity to how we can make the story seem to have a much better spin to it. So God creates. We are the creation, and the mother preserves. The mother draws us home. She takes care of us in the material universe. She is the material universe. All right, and part of her role as the Holy Spirit, and I don't know almost anyone or anything that ever connected the word Holy Spirit with female, sadly, but that's okay. That's their trip. That's the people that tried to make everything male. God the Father and God the Holy Spirit, both of them, he and he got together like it's a masculine board of some, corporation, created us. But the Holy Spirit is the divine feminine, in the ultimate sense, the divine mother. So she protects, she takes care of us, and is our universe calling us home. Now let's continue from there. In a sense, the very moment we thought we could separate, the divine mother became the answer to take us home, that very same instant. So technically, we're already back home dreaming. We're just dreaming that all this has happened. Years and years and multiple lives and levels and consciousness and dimensions and beings. And some people like to make that really important, but some understand it's all an illusion. Buddha said, I'm awake. It means I got it. I got it, man. See, if you're watching this, and think about this. You've heard of a guy named Buddha, and he's all enlightened and all that. But what his name means is I woke up. So if you're watching this and at any moment you go, oh crap, I totally get it. It means in this moment, you're a Buddha. Don't think a Buddha is one that has to shave their head and do all kinds of particulars, and memorize all kinds of yantras and tantras and sutras and, whatever else. It just means I get it. I woke up. Certainly he got it in a big way, and I love that. But credit yourself. If any of this makes sense and you go, wow, I totally get it. This makes sense. Then it means you're getting it. You're waking up and you're not buying into the duality anymore. And you're still going to hear people kvetching and blah, 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 about this and that, trying to pull you off your center. Don't buy it. You don't have to say, thanks for sharing, but no thanks because I'm awakened and you're not. I'm not saying you have to compete or compare, but inside, have that peace that surpasses understanding. It's kind of like, God, there was a time when I would have bought into that, man. I would have bought into that, this or that, this versus that. Now I get it. and it brings a peace because you don't buy into it. So here's where we're at now. Again, you might have heard me share this, but it's important. When we talk about this concept of the divine feminine, there's probably no story or mythology that better depicts this idea than the one called the legend or the myth of Sophia. And Sophia means, like wisdom. That's one of the definitions anyway. Wisdom. But it means it's not just wisdom, it's kind of to be awake, to be wise, to be awakened. I'm when somebody says I'm wise to you, what does it mean? I get it, is what it means. So here's how the legend of Sophia goes. There are some variable versions of it, but it's along these lines. Once upon a time, there's this princess. And the princess lives in her father's kingdom. I hope you're catching on already. This is us. We're all the princess, which is strange, but not. Our soul is, according to standard mythology, is more often referred to as feminine, female. The soul is this beautiful light, but it's kind of got this femininity to it. One reason is because our heart chakra is a feminine chakra, and the soul resides symbolically in the heart. So our heart and soul is like a princess. I think it's one of the most beautiful things. When I see a little girl, with her mom or family, you can just see that purity and that brilliance. And I often will say something, gosh, she can be wearing rags and I'll say, you look like a princess. And some of you may not even like that concept and because you think of it as sexist or something. I'm complimenting the beauty of the soul because you can see it, especially in children and especially in little girls. There's something that the human female, in reality, in God, there is no gender, but the human female has something unique about it, which sadly is also why unhealthy people become predators on that. Because they see a light that they don't perceive in themselves and they think, if I take their light, whether it's through raping, killing, molesting, or controlling, they're trying to, in an unhealthy way, get that light. So, we can hate them for that, but we can also say, yeah, it makes sense that you would want that person's light because you lack your own. What you need, like Buddha said, is to remember. All you just do is suffer from amnesia. You just need to cure your amnesia and remember who you are. Then you'll realize you have the light. You can't get it from anyone or anywhere else. So in the story of Sophia, she's living with her father, and it says, and one day she journeyed away from home, just went out to explore. Well, that's us exploring the universe. And then it says, and then something happened. When Sophia was away, she became abused. Some people took advantage of her and abused her and then shamed her. So bear with me and let your heart be open to hear this. Because guys, this is you and I that went away from heaven. It's also in each lifetime we're born, we're given a little bit of a chance to start over to a degree, start over our lives. And damned if it doesn't happen. Someone, rapes us or wounds us, spews their garbage on us, shames us in some way. And do you remember? Because I do. I mean, think about it. There's times when we went inside and never came back out. Went inside in a negative way, not into the soul, but where we sheltered away. We put up walls, we put up barriers, just felt ashamed. It might have been when you got caught kissing someone. It might have been when you got caught giving some of your food you didn't want, to the dog, and then someone shames you, There's like how dare you? You had food and we took money to buy that food and now you've thrown it away. Whoa. You weren't thinking, I'm an economist, you're 5, You're just trying to go, I don't like this food. But there's so much of that. And at school, the gross things that people do to each other at school. Kids, just kids. Don't give me the story about how, kids are all perfect, because it doesn't take much the kids to start emulating, reflecting their parents and downloading crap onto other kids to make sure the shame gets you as early as possible. And it's very sad, it's very unfortunate, but this is what happens. So Sophia it says in the legend, very ancient legend, she gets shamed and then she doesn't know what to do. But here's the sad thing. Because she thinks she's shamed, because she thinks I was created this beautiful being, and I'm telling you, I don't care what anybody else says. That's exactly how we all were. Perfect, holy, beautiful being. Holy means sacred. We were perfect, holy, and whole beings of light. And then what in the hell went wrong, man? What happened? All this darkening and shaming. And it's like, it's like some innocent child that, wandered off, and then somebody did or said really gross things to it, and it never recovered. And that's what happened to Sophia, the legend says. So she thought, I can't go home now because I'm not worthy. And that's church, state, science, friends, people, families. They all tell us we're flawed. And then we wonder why we can't hear the voice of God as purely as you can your own clicking fingers. We don't know why we can't see it as clear as our own hand. Shame created all the layers between us and God. When we heal the shame that Sophia felt in the first place. So there's another way of saying this. We thought we could separate from God. That was not a problem. That was just a natural occurrence that was going to come to any new creation. I'm a new creation. I wonder what I am, and I wonder what it would be to not be me. That's okay. The bummer was when we judged ourselves for it and shamed ourselves for it. And of course, when others judged us and shamed us. So we did it to ourselves, and other people compounded the problem. But the point of the story at that point is Sophia was pure, and now she's going, I'm dirtied, I'm soiled. And I've known many a people who, in all my years counseling, how many thousands and thousands and thousands of people over the years, my heart never gets used to and hardens to the idea when people have told me, a gal who told me around the year 2004 in a session. She might even be watching, you never know. But how something happened, she and a couple friends were wondering, just like the children of God, wondering, what if, or what, whatever. And they got some local boy and they, explored a little bit, kissing and making and doing whatever. But they thought, can we trust this? Hey boy, can we trust you? Their friend, your friend, can we talk you into doing this and helping us understand some things and trying some things or whatever? In a sense, it's innocent exploration, and nothing horrible was done. It wasn't anything abusive. But by the time they get to school the next day, their lives would never be the same. They had names. They all had new names that the kids would all call them, and it lasted for the rest of their school years. Now I'm counseling one of them, and it must be, 20 years after school, and here this person's still living that stigma. Isn't that strange? That's one person's example. And imagine how many people are on the planet. 7 billion. Where are the 7 billion examples of that? And not any one person has just only one shaming. Every one could have 100. Now do the math on that. Wow, all of a sudden, 700 billion or whatever, right? It's like, how does it keep compounding? What's the number? What's it called? 7 trillion? Where does it end? It doesn't. Other than through waking up and releasing it. So Sophia is on the earth, she's shamed, and she realizes, I can't go home. God, if we understood, if you're a parent and you have a child, and that child, let's say, goes to school and something naughty happens that makes them feel shamed. That child comes home and they're never the same. And it's not because you did anything wrong as a parent, but imagine that child, even though they're maybe cold now, they're different, they're withdrawing, they almost seem to have emotional or psychological disturbances. But sometimes They actually are that way because they feel so ashamed of what they've done to your creation. So imagine what God feels when we say we're not worthy. God's like, as I've said many times, God only says, I love you, come home. I love you, come home. When we're home, it's just, I love you. And then the love is. But while we think we're away, God says, I love you, come home. We're like, we can't. We're dirty. We're shameful. God, we've done some bad things. And having had children, that things like that have happened in their lives, there's not an ounce of me that would ever think, because something bad happened to you, I love you less? I mean, if anything, it multiplies my love and compassion like, sweetheart, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened. Come here and let me hold you in love and let's heal. I think that's the way most of you would parent. And notice that's neither male or female parenting, right? See, when you get into spirit, all the gender stuff just falls away. For any good parent, oh my gosh, come here, honey, love them. But what if your child said, no, I can't. I'm going to run away now because I've been ruined. I did something, I got high, I drank beer, smoked pot, did acid, got raped, whatever. Things that I'm naughty now. I'm not your beautiful little child anymore. It's what the ego tries to do, is make us do things to ourselves and then judges us for it so that we can't escape this world. Now we're caught into guilt and shame, and then the guilt and shame becomes karmic stuff that we now have to keep reincarnating to clear. All right, now, so Sophia can't get out, and the legend says that her brother comes and volunteers and says to God, to the father in the story, Mr. Cartwright, I'm going to go and find her and bring her home. So her brother, Cartwright, that's a reference to Bonanza, but never mind. So, little Joe says, I'll go find sister. And you never saw sister on Bonanza, did you? Why? Because she was ashamed, hiding out. So little Joe says, I'll go get her, comes to the earth, finds her, and helps heal her of her shame, and then brings her home. And they all lived happily ever after. But do you notice all the layers of story there? First of all, that's the story of all mythologies. The story of someone getting lost and then getting found. So it's the root of all other mythologies, really. But also this story is telling us about how we all came to earth, got shamed, and one of our brothers, one of the mutual souls equals Jesus, decided and said, I'll go. Comes in and becomes the one to wake up and bring everyone home. That's the Jesus piece or metaphor. So it's also where you hear like concepts of, Krishna and Radha, or Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Why there's a story. Magdalene is a perfect, like a major embodiment of Sophia. And some people, no. Magdalene, she was, this, and they all want to make up different stories of who she was, and that's fine. But the reason, even if it's not accurate, the reason the church or whomever ended up making her to be kind of a sinner was because if it wasn't her, it was going to be somebody, meaning she was living out the role of Sophia. Now, let's pretend they didn't do that to her. I would volunteer. I myself would volunteer. I'd say, hey, somebody make up a legend, a story about me, and say I was a complete lost nutcase on planet Earth, and the light found me and redeemed me. I wouldn't have any issues and say, oh, that's giving me kind of a negative spin. Man, it means I, which is one with you, we all got found and released from the illusion. I think it's great. But that's what the story of Sophia was about. So here's a third way now to look at it. And this is where the real kind of a positive spin of what the divine feminine is. It's not you becoming an angry woman. Because that's not redeemed, that's not holy, that's not sacred, that's not divine. I mean, just common sense, okay? Here's where we go. The divine feminine is a symbol found in Mother Mary, Kuan Yin, and the like. But in Mother Mary, notice how Mother Mary gives birth to Jesus. But if you do your research, Mother Mary was a Christed being. She and Jesus made an agreement. Let's as souls become Christed, completely remembering our divinity. Well, we can say that, but we can't manifest it till we live it. So they get born to prove that they can do it. They get born into the earth plane. But their agreement is, I'll do the feminine role, you do the masculine role, because on earth there's genders. What is the feminine role? I'll play the role of birthing you. I honestly cannot tell you that Jesus' role as the Christ is any greater than Mary's. And Mary's a manifestation of Kuan Yin, the universal mother. So here it is, the divine mother that becomes the universal mother, that becomes the earth mother, that then becomes the human perfection of mother, is immaculate, meaning she's pure. Doesn't matter really whether it's impregnated by spirit or not, or human. That's actually not as important as the other piece. Pure in heart is more important than whether she was a virgin or not. So pure in heart, she's able to say one way or the other, I am so clear, because we cannot manifest God's will unless our hearts are pure. We can do variations of it, but if we want to really go all the way and manifest God's will, because people ask, how do I really place my life, my future, my everything, my mind, my heart, my soul into the hands of God? How do I? Indeed. You don't become Jesus and you become the Christ. That's not how this works. Christians often think, I have to become like Jesus. You cannot become like Jesus, who was once upon a time, remember, a baby born in Bethlehem. All that little story, right? You cannot be the infant Jesus if you don't know how to be the mother first. So you can't even ask God to ignite the Christ or your true self into perfect awakening without first becoming the divine feminine. You cannot birth the Christ. Everybody's waiting for the second coming. You can't have a second coming if you don't have the divine feminine ready to birth the second coming. The second coming of Christ is the one that happens in you and I. So, in you and me. So, we can understand instead, what is my job? I need to become a spiritual person. You can do that. But try this instead. I need to instead of trying to become the perfect child, I need to become more of the divine feminine. That is not an age of angry women running the world. It's right here. The divine feminine means my heart chakra, which is the chakra of my soul, extends out my arms and becomes a chalice, reaching up to the heavens like this. That beautiful, you'll see that in Native American tradition constantly. You'll see that in drawings and stuff. Drawings and art forms where someone is standing with their head to the sky and their arms out. That's also symbolism if you look at the geometry of that. What that is a circle representing God and then a U shape representing the arms, also the womb. Because this is a symbol of the divine feminine, and that circle, which is the head of the person in the drawing of the Native American doing this, if you look at it, that's what this is. You see? And their body is just the body, but my heart becomes the arms, and it also becomes the chalice. The Holy Grail is here, if nowhere else. Right here. And in the center, and you see in a tarot card, the Holy Host, which is a Catholic symbol too. Don't get me started on all that, but here come the Holy Host, the circle of bread, communion bread, down into the chalice, receiving. So when they say the body of Christ and the blood of Christ, A Course in Miracles refers to that, even though it's sacred to certain religions. A Course in Miracles refers to that as morbid, because you're talking about blood and guts, basically. And in A Course in Miracles, he says, no, look at it. The body of Christ, have this bread and remember me. It means the consciousness, man, of God descending into, and the blood. The blood doesn't mean gore and blood. It means, it sounds like a vampire story. Jesus was just Dracula. Instead, the arms open is the blood. And so here comes the bread and the wine. I'm the chalice, the wine. The wine is my soul. Here I am. And my heart, my soul gets quickened by the incoming presence of God. But before we say, God, how do I know what you want me to do? You say this talk is kind of twofold, because it's about the divine feminine, but it's also about how to receive guidance, in a sense. How to put our hands, our life in God's hands. Because we're saying, here I am. If you don't say, here I am, what could come? Without saying, I have birthed the divine feminine in me. Oh my God. The divine feminine is the humility. She's pure. She's Sophia. I'm back. I'm wise. I get it. I'm awakened. Here I am, God. Or as Mary, Mother Mary said, I am the handmaiden of the Lord, meaning, here I am. Do with me what you will. And to some people, that's like some sort of derogatory statement. It's because you're wounded. When you have an issue with that, we shouldn't be surrendering ourselves. That's because you're wounded. Okay, go to a Heal Thyself chat room or something and hang out there for a while. But if you want to listen to this, you got to be willing to own bigger things. This isn't demeaning. It's lifting. When I say, here I am, I'm holy. I'm divine, waiting for the quickening to my remembrance. And boom, here we go. Absolutely perfect. So that is the ultimate marriage of the divine masculine feminine. Not genders, but it looks like it for now. The ultimate marriage, the alchemical marriage, which is also featured in the book of Revelation, where all of a sudden my body, my physical human ego self surrenders to my soul. My lower ego self surrenders to my soul. That's why the masculine world surrenders to the feminine. Because my human ego, kind of a masculine, for all of us, male or female, it still has a masculine energy to it, controlling and so on. It dies and I become the feminine. That's the age we're waiting for, where the human masculine surrenders to the soul feminine. But then the soul feminine surrenders to the perfection of bliss again, where we awaken. And it's such a beautiful thing. I wish I were better somehow at articulating the beauty of it, because it's beyond words. You can't capture it. But if you sit and you look at things that are beautiful, you can breathe them in and get a feeling of it. And like I said, I get that when certain art, colors, scent, I love that. Arrangement, creations. And God, I see that in children all the time. But not because I'm making children better than adults, because that's duality again. Instead, it's just a little bit of God, that's how I see it. It just happens. So I don't analyze it or judge it. I just love it. And, I'm in awe. I don't want to look like a creep, if I'm at a store staring at a child for too long. But I'm in awe. I just sit and watch, breaks my heart if I see the children being abused in stores and stuff. I don't dig that. But man, when you just see the light ignited, God, watching boys and girls, and girls seem to maintain it a bit longer, that light, and not get real physical, But man, they're in a state of wonder. They can't just walk from one place to another. They have to twirl, and oh, look, mommy, and just all over the place. It's so beautiful. Not scattered, but there's an awe, and that's what our soul does when it comes into this universe. There's a wonderment and a fear too. Because that little girl, remember, is also this close to being lost. If her mom takes a right in the hallway or whatever they call those aisles in the stores, and the kid takes a left, there's an instant like panic, right? And that's what the universe is like. We flew in and there's wonderment like, wow. At the same time, where are we? And we can stay close to God and say, God, I don't know my own best interests. That's a quote from A Course in Miracles. I do not know my own best interests. I have forgotten my divinity. When we stand around and go, oh no, I went to an empowerment workshop and they told me my divinity. I am a divine being, especially if I keep repeating that. If I get a shirt, I am a divine being, that'll definitely lock it in. No, it doesn't work that way. You can, I don't care, go to your so-and-so books and so-and-so's seminars of 3,000 people all standing around going, we are empowered. It doesn't override the thing that happened, the veil that we created and flew through and entered this dark world. Those little statements don't cut it. It helps, but it doesn't actually heal it. The only thing that heals Sophia is to be awakened and go home. Sophia is my soul and your soul. Sophia is the real us that has forgotten and now needs to remember. That's all. That's why Buddha said, and Course in Miracles says, you forgot and now you need to remember. And that looks like talks like this, reading books and workshops and, all those kinds of things, healing processes, all those things. But don't think those things are of themselves the healing. They are the tools. The healing is when you and I make a choice to not be in the darkness anymore. The tools are then what we utilize, but nothing is greater than our consistent decision to say, I'm going to start every day again being that divine feminine type of being. Every day I'm going to start my day saying, here I am. Ignite me. You see, just the way the light in the creation of a baby, there's this quickening. So every morning, starting every morning saying, here I am. Being humble and say, I don't know everything, I don't have all the answers. I don't know how I got here. I don't know how to get home. Well, I know how. What you need to do is, smoke this, drink this, stand on your head and whatever. And we do these things and think, whoa, that is kind of trippy. They're not answers, they're tools. And some tools are more effective and some are more efficient than others. But all the tools on the planet not all of them, I'm talking about the physical, tangible tools, techniques, all of the tools added up together even altogether, do not add up to a greater sum as our ability to say the simple words, here I am. That's how amazing the divine feminine is. In her humility, which is in our hearts and souls, in her humility, the one statement of, here I am, what would you have me do today, is greater than all the tools. You can go and, smoke a peace pipe. You can stand on your head, do all your yoga. You can make sure you eat just right. You can do, all the breath work in the world. And I've taught that, so I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm saying there's things that help along the way. But all of the tools and techniques, ring the chimes, blow the didgeridoo, all that. All it is it's a hollow piece of wood. It's nothing. You can do your herbs. You can ring your bells. Great. Affirm that you're going to meet your soulmate. Great. The planets can all be aligned. Excellent. They all help. I'm saying, try to imagine this. All of those are still doings, which are actually then a little more masculine energetically. There's an alternate that is being rather than doing. So a billion doings don't add up to one moment of being. Being open. Being receptive. Here I am. And I don't know. I have an inkling, of course, but I don't know how many of you are really going to get that and understand that and appreciate it. Some people take offense to anything that seems a threat to their anger, which I guess would seem a bit dangerous to their ego that is stuck in anger. But it doesn't have to stay that way. But we all decide when that'll end. So if people are kind of stuck in that and they don't dig what I'm saying about this, this too shall pass. There'll be one way or another. The mother's with them as it is with me and with you. But the mother's going to reflect lessons, maybe harder lessons to them to get it, than it would somebody that says, here I am. Because when you say, here I am, the mother's like, excellent. So I'm going to be the you that says, here I am, and I'm going to help you awaken and give birth to your inner Christ. Mary gave birth to Jesus, but that's literal. What Spirit wants is for the Divine Mother in us to give birth, the Divine Feminine in us to give birth to the Christ, meaning the light within us, our true identity. Because that's what Christ means. Not Christianity. I'm not talking about a religion. And I'm not talking about something that was supposedly exclusively owned by Jesus, because he doesn't agree with that, nor do I. People say that, but that's not what he believes. We all have to give birth. The word Christ means our true self. So the Divine Feminine is needed in us to give birth to the Divine Christ self. And that's not gender. Christ is the God self. So I pray this has made good sense. I pray that it would, somehow serve you and somehow be helpful, in one way or another. So I want to thank you